all I'm going to say right now. It is 10 o'clock. It is WIOFLP, Woodstock 104, and it is now time for Pot Talk with Joe Barton and Paula Gloria.
I'm growing marijuana in my yard. Growing marijuana in my yard. Got little pots of pine spread out all over the lot, 'cause I'm growing marijuana in my yard. Well, I got the seed from Mexico. Stick it in some dirt and let it grow. Put it in my garden with my peppers and my peas, and I get all the smoke I need to breathe. 'Cause I'm growing marijuana in my yard. Growing marijuana in my yard. We keep it where no one can see, so let's keep this between you and me. But I'm growing marijuana in my yard. 'Cause I'm growing marijuana in my yard. I can't tell I'm boss or I'll get fired. I don't grow much, just what I use. I work all day, and when I'm through, I smoke some marijuana from my yard. Now the policeman wants to talk to me. He says, how you gonna smoke up all that weed? He says, money's what you're in it for. Don't you know we're in a war? Now I'm gonna haul your ass downtown with me. I said, hey man, what is it to you? How do I infringe on what you do? Well, I beg your pardon if you're offended by my garden. I just can't grow Prozac in my yard. So I grow my own medicine in my yard. I give some to my neighbor for his harm. Share it with my grandma and keeps it from her son. 'Cause we all know that's dust against the law. Now there's nothing growing in my yard. Those cops will call my lane and both will come. Now I have to buy my pot from a teenager in the parking lot who's growing marijuana in his yard.
Christie, partisan order. Christie's a dope. Partisan order. Christie's a dope.
Never mind the
And let's make it more legal. Forget what they're doing in Colorado and Washington. Too many regs. Deschedule, now reschedule. See you at the rally.
Okay. I don't have her number. How you doing out there in radio and television land? Another episode of Pot Talk. And that guy who just sung the song, well, Paula, you tell him.
Well, we're so excited, everybody. We finally found Ben Scales. For those of you who watched that Pot Talk song, you know, the visual that I picked up on the internet, and it was in 2010 when Joe and Jay were before Donald Williams in Kingston in October, that I picked up this song from the internet and most of the graphics, and then what I did was I was learning Final Cut 7, so I overlaid the song with the words. And at the end, we always said, thanks to Ben Scales. And Joe always thought that was a pseudonym, right? A pen name?
Yeah, and we were trying to find him for a long, long time. And finally, Paula, through the internet, has found him.
I was digging around with some of the Dana Beal interviews, and that's how I found it.
Yeah, and we're going to try at some point in time to have him call in because we love his song, Growing Marijuana in My Yard.
And especially since I'd post on YouTube, and then I would get these copyright infringements that CD Baby owned it, but I just never heard of CD Baby, and I knew that I'd been using it for a long time. So what we saw, it had about 26,000 hits. If you go to youtube.com, Ben Scales, he had a YouTube channel all along, and you'll see him and two other people performing, and where I believe is in Asheville, North Carolina. Is that where Asheville is, North Carolina?
Yes.
Yeah. A pretty enlightened place. And he's also got a lot of other nice songs him and his family sing in the car.
Yeah.
So
But
we're happy about that.
we're going to bring you up to the latest. We went down to New York City for the pot parade. I was supposed to speak down there, which I did at the beginning of the parade. And there was a lot of wannabe activists. That's it. A lot of wannabe activists who really don't know what they're talking about. They haven't walked the walk. They haven't paid the dues. And they act like they're real important because somehow they think they're an activist. We had a few run-ins with some of them because they were all pushing, oh, we want legalization, legalization. And we kept telling them, no, we don't want legalization. We want repeal of a law that should have never been. And I kept trying to tell them that legalization still means regulation, and regulation still means people will be going to jail. So we had a big conflict with a lot of them who were new activists who think they know it all and haven't followed everything that's been going on. Like, well, I've been active for 40 years, so I know all the scams. Medical marijuana is another scam. We don't want medical. We don't want legalization. We want them to repeal a law that was unconstitutional from its inception. Ann Slinger lied to Congress to get the law passed. The DEA put it in Schedule 1, knowing that even before they made it illegal, it was in 50% of the medicines. When you went into the pharmacy back in the 30s, 50% of the medicines were had hemp in them. So when they said has no medical effect, they knew that they were lying. And you people out there should know that just about everything the government tells you at this point in time is a lie. I mean, they lied to you about 9/11. They lied to you about everything. Now, we have an election coming up, and they haven't picked the Democratic candidate because the Democrats haven't had their big, whatever it is, convention, and the Republicans haven't had their big convention. But how come most of us already know it's going to be Hillary and Jeb Bush, which shows that it's all rigged from the very get-go. Now, I don't vote because I don't vote for criminals, and that's all that's running anymore. But you people out there who do vote, I would recommend that you don't vote for the Republicans, you don't vote for the Democrats, you vote for the guy who has the least chance of winning. If all of a sudden we started putting in people who they would never have put in place, we might actually see some changes going down. But if we get Hillary or we get Jeb Bush, we're going to get more of the same. We're going to lose more rights, and more than likely, whichever one we get, they're going to keep pushing for World War III because the lunatics that run this world have decided, and you can read it, it's in their documents, the PNAC or whatever, what is the other one called?
Well, that's the Project for a New American Century.
Yeah. It's in their documents that there's 7 billion people on the planet, and they think, well, we got to cut back on that. And there's a lot of you people out there who say, yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, that's a good idea. But let me tell you, it's you that they're talking about. If there's 7 billion people on the planet and they decided that they want to get rid of 6 billion, that's with a B, 6 billion, that's all you people out there listening to me on the radio and television. So you just keep voting for these clowns, and you're putting your neck in the noose. So what do you got to say about the marijuana march, Paula? We're going to do more on that. We met a lady down there who's got the same rap as we've been saying, so we asked her to call in so you can hear it from somebody else other than us.
Well, actually, I was more impressed than I thought I would be because it was starting at 32nd and Broadway, and I knew that not to be a very large area, but I thought that Dana did, a pretty good job of organizing under the circumstances that he was in. He's on probation, so apparently he's not able to speak, which makes one question, probation taking away your right to speech. But like I say, the caller that's going to call in, she was a real breath of fresh air. And there were other people that once they got the argument about repeal, they would have been quick learners. So it made me realize to be very grateful that I ran into you and Abigail when I did. I met Joe at a marijuana rally in Albany, April 30th, 2010. And somebody showed me a postcard and it had all the relevant points. I'd never seen any marijuana march or activity that said free the prisoners. Now, even though today you're talking about LEAP, you want to speak about LEAP?
Yeah, down at the rally, we spoke at the beginning of the rally because they weren't letting the old-time people talk, the old-time activists. At the rally when it got to the Union Square, and it was basically who controlled the rally at Union Square was normal, boo, and LEAP, that's law enforcement against prohibition. Now, when you hear law enforcement against prohibition, it sounds like they're on the same page as us. And they want repeal, but no, they don't. They want. I agree with LEAP when they say that they want to free all marijuana, all drug prisoners, and they want to stop more prisoners from going in. On that, I'm in agreement with LEAP. But then here's where the hook is. They say, "Oh, we want to tax and regulate." Now, marijuana is an herb, and before there was ever any laws against it, every farmer could grow it. It wasn't taxed till they started the Marijuana Tax Act, but before that, no farmers ever paid a tax on it. And you don't pay taxes on tomatoes when you get tomatoes at the store. You don't pay taxes if you go into a health food store and you buy herbs. You don't pay taxes on the herbs. Yet they want to tax it, and the real hook here is they say regulate it. Anytime you have regulation, with regulation comes fines and incarceration. So what they're really saying is we want to make it legal so the big fat cats can get a license to supply it, which if you think the price of marijuana is high now, if the government and the big corporations get control of it, you are not going to be able to afford marijuana, especially you medical people who are all saying, "Oh, I want for medical, I got a condition." Well, taxing and regulating, and even the medical, California was all happy they had medical marijuana. Now out there, a lot of them are sorry that they ever did it, which a guy named Michael Moran was the first guy who started the medical marijuana movement out in California. Michael Moran was a friend of mine. And when he said he was going to do medical marijuana, I told him just what was going to happen. And it's all proven true to now that the big corporations or the pharmaceutical companies would take it over, and the old-time hippies, which Mike Moran was one, would still be going to jail. And that's what's happening out in California. We on the East Coast here, oh, marijuana is legal, is basically pretty legal out in California. Well, that's not true. There's still a lot of people going to jail, and the lawyers are making a killing out in California because now the average marijuana case out there costs, if you get a lawyer, between $50,000 and $100,000. That's insane for getting busted out there. And the feds, the feds are the one that are busting everybody out there. But now the feds are giving money to the local sheriff's department to do busting, even though the law out there was changed. They had the people, what was it called, when all the people voted it for the law?
Referendum.
All right, the people had a referendum and said, we want medical marijuana. But now a lot of the sheriffs out there are getting paid, getting big money from the federal government, so they're ignoring the referendum and they're busting medical marijuana suppliers. And in Oregon, it's pretty much the same thing. And the only place that's still relatively free, even though it's not free, is Colorado. Colorado probably has the most liberal laws on it.
But I'm sure it must be still very tricky in Colorado, because there was a guy, Captain Cannabis, who was really looking forward to coming to New York at the height of the Rick Simpson Run from the Cure, going around on the internet. And he had a strain that he called the Cure, and the first thing that happened is they were saying that it's the copyright is owned by a rock and roll group called the Cure. Therefore, he couldn't use. Yeah, right. Trademark disputes on that. And let's see, why else did the DEA come in? It was very scary for him. He was starting to do wonderful things. He had, he had his uncle who had cancer and gave him so much oil that the uncle's wife couldn't even hear his heartbeat with the stethoscope. She couldn't hear him breathe. She thought he was dead. And he emerged from this
cancer-free.
Cancer-free, yeah. From this deep sleep. So it's almost like they were doing their own, the feds or the state is doing their own research and development by letting the cultivation just sort of roll, letting the research roll, and then they rein it all in, and pretty soon the person who thinks he's on his way to a sustainable livelihood finds himself or herself with an ankle bracelet tending to the man's plantation. It's like they don't even put you in jail. They want you to grow the pot that they want to distribute.
We have our caller on the line. Are you there? Hello.
Hi, I'm here.
All right, wonderful. Why don't you tell our guests who you are, our radio audience?
My name is Kimberleigh Krepp, and I'm from the Capital District Cannabis Consortium, Americans for Cannabis.
Okay, why don't you give your rap, and I'm going to slip out and have a cigarette, so talk away, and I'll be right back.
Just before you speak, Kim, for people in this neck of the woods, they still remember the work of Abigail Storm, and she used to have a public access show called The Hemp Controversy, and she did New York Camp. So when we first encountered you at the beginning of the pot parade, instantly just looking at the sign that you had, the graphics on it, and the clarity of your message, it reminded me so much of Abigail Storm, who I met on camera and who so impressed me with the points that I know you're going to be sharing with our listeners right now.
Well, I'd like to say thank you so much for that comment, because although I've never met Abigail, I've heard so much about her, and she's someone I would love to have the opportunity to meet and sit down and talk with.
Wonderful. I hope it happens soon. So tell me how you started your group.
Well, we've experienced a lot of the criminal aspects of marijuana firsthand, and we started to, instead of being on the inside of the jails, we started to come out and try to change policy, because we realized that the marijuana policy is ineffective. We've been challenged by it, many of us, from our entire lives. I could remember the first time I ever got busted for marijuana. I was in front of Sal's Deli at CBGB's on 3rd and the Bowery, and the cops pulled us out of the car and, took our weed, and it went from there.
Wow. They
and
pulled you
having,
out?
Yeah, and having experienced it, and this is probably in like 1984,
Wow.
85. Yeah, and the policy that, has been coming to light is not policy that actually helps people that are actually affected by cannabis prohibition to begin with.
Right.
The people that are affected primarily, that are incarcerated, that have job losses and have all the adverse effects of prohibition are very low income individuals.
Right.
Sometimes it seems like that cannabis prohibition is used as a class war
Of
in order to
course,
keep
yeah.
people in society in certain sectors.
Right, right.
If it wasn't for marijuana having criminal charges, then you wouldn't have people with criminal records that aren't able to excel and have better jobs.
Exactly.
Without marijuana prohibition, you can't have people bagging groceries at Walmart and things like that. It's such a crippling thing, 85, we've seen numbers that are coming out saying that 85% of the people that are convicted of low-level marijuana offenses are low-income Black and Latino youth, and these marijuana convictions affect their futures, and it's something that stays on their record forever. And although they have decriminalized marijuana, the way the law reads is it's not every time it's a ticket, it's the first offense it's a ticket.
Right.
And it can keep escalating from there. The policy that they'd like to instate in New York is pretty unaffordable to the average person. And
You mean that the license costs $200,000?
not only that, just the $10,000 application fee is not refundable in itself.
Oh my goodness! Did
They'll
you know
give you
that,
the
Joe? It's a $10,000 non-refundable application fee to get a license
Yeah.
to grow marijuana.
Yeah, I saw that.
Wow.
I'd like to point out, back, I think it was 71, could have been 72 because I'm not great at years, but we had 100,000 people came to Washington, and back then we were saying legalize marijuana, right? We didn't know about repeal at the time, and Keith Strop and another lawyer, his partner, who started Normal, came to a bunch of us activists and a lot of the big dealers. At the time, I was a big dealer. I was making a lot of money. And he asked me to come to the first annual...
Marijuana March?
Normal meeting, right? And a bunch of activists...
Tell people who don't know what normal means, what N-O-R-M.
No, let me finish what I'm saying.
Okay.
A bunch of activists and a lot of big dealers went to the first one. And outside the meeting, Keith Strop approached me and another big dealer at the time. I don't remember his name. And he said, we really could use your support and we could use some funding. And and I said, well, what exactly are you trying to do? And he said, well, we're trying to decriminalize 2 ounces of marijuana. And I said, well, yes, I don't like that you're trying to decriminalize. What about freeing all the people and stopping all arrests? And he said, well, we got to take little steps. And he said, we want you to support us for doing 2 ounces of marijuana decriminalized, where there's no penalties. And I said to him, I can't support you on that. That means lawyers like you will be able to sit around your office and smoke pot and not have to worry about getting busted. And dealers like me and most of my friends will be going to jail. And then it was time to go into the meeting. And this other guy that was there too, another big dealer, I wish I could remember his name, who also was against it. When we were going into the meeting, Keith Strop pointed to me and he pointed to this other guy. And these 4 football player type guys grabbed us, threw us in a room, and locked us in the room so we could not speak at the first Normal conference. And
I can believe it.
Let me
I've had
finish.
my share of the legalizers trying to throw shade at myself and my organization in order to, take the focus off the message that we're trying to bring.
Yeah, let me.
In our opinion, legalization is exactly what you said it was. It's for the lawyers, it's for the politicians' children, and everybody else is still back to square one.
Right.
And now the federal government is saying if it's legal in your state, then and you follow your state's guidelines, then they won't interfere. However, if you interfere with state law, then the feds will automatically step in. So great. All the poor people are now going to be facing, or not even just poor people, middle-class people. Everyone, except for the wealthy, are going to be facing charges on a federal level instead of a state now.
Right. But anyway, because Keith Stropp then started NORML, he said, protesting, you people don't have to protest. Let us lawyers fight this case. Had he not done that, the next year we would have had 1 million people in Washington, D.C., and we probably would have got it legalized back then. And then we would have started pushing for repeal of all the laws. But as far as I'm concerned, Keith Stropp and NORML subverted the movement. And when we went down into the city to the marijuana march, who was talking at the main stage? All the old activists weren't allowed to speak, like myself or Dana or some of the other people that have been doing it for 40 years. And LEAP was the main people speaking there, controlling the stage. These are the same cops that used to bust us that have now taken over the marijuana movement, and they're going to tell us, we're going to tell you what the movement should be. And they're pushing for legalization, regulation, and taxation, which all the old-time activists are against that. And it's now been taken over. The movement has been taken over by LEAP and NORML completely.
Yes, it has, and I can agree with you there, and the DPA as well.
Yeah, go ahead. Say whatever you want to have to say.
Pretty much, it's difficult with the legalizers because they really don't like to let our voices be heard. And it's unfair because the true freedom lies in repeal. Legalization wants people to agree to a controlled substance to be a certain amount that is acceptable by society for use. Well, whose society standards are they judging in order to evaluate the use when, to begin with, marijuana shouldn't be illegal to begin with? With the Schaefer Commission, when marijuana was originally placed on the Controlled Substances Act on a temporary basis in the early 70s, the Schaefer Commission was hired in order to evaluate marijuana to see if any of the reports coming back saying that it caused people to be crazy and lethargic and criminal-minded were true, and what to really do with cannabis as a controlled substance, if it should be there, if it shouldn't be there. Well, the Schaefer Commission came back and they said that everything that was ever said about marijuana, all the adverse effects such as psychosis and bad behavior, was just born of racist hype, and that the best solution was to repeal cannabis prohibition. Well, if this committee was hired in order to evaluate the substance, and their evaluation came back to repeal cannabis prohibition and find a better solution for drug abuse in America, because it was noted that the abuse of a substance is a mental health issue. It has nothing to do with the substance at all. And the Schaefer report even said that and stated that.
Let me jump in on that, because I was quite aware of that at the time. And when the Schaefer Commission gave their report to Nixon, Nixon said in 2 weeks he'll make a statement on it. And in 2 weeks he came out on television and he said, even though the Schaefer Commission said that it's harmless and that it was alienating a generation from society. He said, in his opinion, he didn't believe that America wanted its children taking drugs, so he turned it down.
Right. So personal opinion has taken the place of science.
Yeah. Yes.
And law.
Yeah.
And law.
And law.
And it was also the Canadians did the same thing and said the same thing, that marijuana does no harm. And Mayor LaGuardia, back when Anslinger started this, saying that marijuana was all creating all these problems, Mayor LaGuardia appointed a commission. I think it was called the LaGuardia Commission, and they came back and said the same thing. And Mayor LaGuardia was fighting it back then and trying not to make it illegal in New York State. And that's the story.
I can quote LaGuardia on that from his speech.
Go ahead.
And it says, prohibition cannot be enforced for the simple reason that the majority of the American people do not want it enforced, and they are resisting its enforcement. That being so, the orderly thing to do under our form of government is to abolish a law which cannot be enforced, a law in which the people of the country do not want enforced.
Wow. What year was that, Kim?
30, let me check, hang on. I know it was 30-something.
1930?
Well, no, it was later than that. But
1939?
It was when LaGuardia was governor of New York. That's all people need to know.
It was 38. I think it was 38.
38.
Wow, what a speech.
Yeah, LaGuardia was cool.
Yeah, he was.
But right now, I was really depressed at the marijuana thing because we had all these wannabe activists who don't have a clue of what the movement is really about, running around going, legalize, tax it, regulate it. And they don't have a clue what taxing, regulation, and legalization does. And I had a bunch of arguments with them, and quite a few of them, like you, got real uptight at me. And, had they been able to, they would have attacked me on it. But I've been around too long for that. I usually can shut them down because most of the time they're amateur activists.
Yeah, they were going pretty hard on me there too.
Yeah, you were, for us, you were a breath of fresh air. You were one of the few young people that actually see it clearly.
Well, I was very happy to have met you because we've been doing it solo. And honestly, we do, for the past 2 years, we've been doing the Global Marijuana March here in Albany, and we're lucky if 20 people show up. But we still do it.
What time of year?
We do it on the 2nd.
Of May?
We also, and we also do, we've done 2 420 rallies and a jury nullification, 2 jury nullification rights events in the park, in a small, it's a very small park, where we brought a grill and we cooked out for the community and handed out jury nullification information the Saturday before September 5th, which is jury nullification day. And then on September 5th, for the past 2 years, we've been going to the Albany County Courthouse and distributing information for the Fully Informed Jury Association. Yeah,
that's good. I was doing that for quite a while, too, the jury nullification.
Yes.
But we should get together and do a rally up in Albany together.
I would love to.
Do you have a sound system?
I don't, but I can get one.
Okay. And a stage. We don't need much more
Well,
than that.
You have my number. Stay in touch with me. And one of the best dates, I used to put on festivals for quite a while. When no one was doing the Woodstock festival, they stopped doing it. They asked Michael Lang if he was going to do a 20th anniversary, and he said he didn't think people would be interested in Woodstock
after 20
years. Well,
right.
I went to the original Woodstock site about a week before the anniversary date, And there were thousands of people up there just hanging out, walking around going, wouldn't it be nice if it could happen again? Wouldn't it be nice if it could happen again? So I said, let's make it happen. And I put out some money, and we bought some lumber, and we started building a stage. And people said, well, what are you doing? We said, we're building a stage. We're going to put on a concert. And then all kinds of people started chipping in and giving us more money for the wood for the stage. And I had a friend who had a sound system, and I called him up and told him to come to Woodstock, to the Woodstock Festival site out in Bethel, the original one. And for 5 years, I put on shows out there, and I put on 5 Woodstocks and 3 Freedom Fests, where we had thousands of people, 10,000 people come. So I can get us some good bands to come and play. But the best dates.
Maybe Ben Scales will come.
The best dates that I've learned over all the years for putting on a festival or something is the 3rd week in July. The weather's almost always perfect. So let's start thinking about the 3rd week in July.
Okay.
And preferably during the week when the legislature's there, so they can hear us. When you do it on the weekend, none of the legislature are there, so it's not worth doing, because it's just a bunch of hippies who all agree, and we don't get the politicians to hear what we have to say.
Well, the way Albany's set up, it's pointless to even go to the Capitol on the weekend because no one's there.
And I've done
past it. It's a major dead zone unless they're there or it's business hours.
Yeah, I've done rallies up there under Freedom First Party. We started a political party called Freedom First Party. We're about freedom all the way, freeing marijuana prisoners, freedom on every level.
Free your mind.
Yeah, free your mind.
And your butt follows.
So we could work on getting permits. You're up there, right?
Yeah, I'm up here.
So maybe you could work on getting the permits on the Freedom First Party, because we've done them there before, so they know us.
Okay.
You can't deny a political party a permit. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, that's the value. A lot of times when people are, making this mad rush for 501c3s, in the regulations for 501c3s, you can't be political. But if you just come straight out and say we're a political party, then to deny you a permit would be to deny free speech, and the people who are issuing permits could very well be the agencies that your political party is addressing. So you can see the logic's very simple.
And the Supreme Court has ruled that the parties in power cannot stifle a party in formation. So they can't deny permits to political parties. That's how the Yippies managed to do the marijuana parade for all these years, because the Yippies were a political organization.
Okay. The first time I ever went on a pop march, I used to live on Leroy Street and in the village, and the first time I went, I was probably 12.
Wow.
And I never made it past 23rd Street. It was when it was from Washington Square to the UN.
Oh.
And for like 4 years, I never made it past 23rd Street. I would have to go home and go to sleep. I used to love that march. And it was a lot of fun, but it seems like it's gotten a lot more political over the years. And I would have liked to see them give the opportunity for someone to voice the full repeal of cannabis prohibition, because with repeal, people don't understand what legalization is. And like I like to say, people hear the word and they're like, oh, legalization, we can do what we want to do. And they don't read what the rules and the regulations are.
Yeah, they would not let me speak on the main stage. Dana hooked me up to be a speaker at the beginning of the parade, but the people who were controlling the stage, Leap and Normal, I've had run-ins with Normal for 40 years, and Normal never lets me up on any of their stages.
Yeah.
but I think it's time for us to start a whole new movement without them.
Right, I think so too, and I think that for a while I was thinking I was pretty much the solo ranger, and that it was going to be real hard to pull people together. But I'm relieved to know that people are out there and they understand, and I know that when we get together and we join forces, our message is going to change the mind of the people that are asking for legalization, because they don't know what they're asking for. When they hear the word legalization, they think it is what we're talking about.
Yeah, they're getting sucked in. It's all
Right.
a scam. Normal and Leap are like Leap. You notice Leap says police against prohibition, but they're not saying we want repeal of the law.
Right.
They know how to use the words to make it seem like they're offering you something really good, while meantime all they're doing is putting it in the hands of the big pharmaceutical companies, the big fat cats, and the people who've been fighting for it for all these years are still going to be the ones getting arrested.
Right, and we also have to look at the fact that LEAP is the members and the supporters, they're ex-DAs, lawyers, judges, corrections officers, police officers.
All the
Without
guys that used to bust
legalization
us.
and regulation and criminal penalties, their industry is going to shrivel up and die. That's why they'll never speak on repeal.
Right.
Because without us to fall victim to their propaganda, they're out of business.
You got it.
But doesn't normal also say repeal and NORML? Isn't that repeal?
They say repeal.
Reform.
No, they say reform.
But it's like, to me, it's kind of like a
Right.
trick. They say repeal prohibition, but then they give you a law. That's
Right.
not repealing prohibition. That's extending it.
No,
There's a paradigm.
Normal
between-
means National Organization for
for the reform
Reform.
of marijuana laws.
Right.
Reform of Marijuana Laws. Was it ever repeal? I thought at the beginning it was repeal.
Never.
Never?
No.
That was what I had the big fight with Keith Strop about.
I
He
see.
wanted to just decriminalize 2 ounces of marijuana. And I told him that means that anybody with more than 2 ounces is still going to be going to jail. And I told him, unless you push to stop all incarcerations and no more new ones, I can't support you. And that's when they grabbed me and locked me in a room so I couldn't speak.
So,
Right.
Kim, you've been by yourself on this. You say solo, so this must be an inspiration that comes from very deep within you.
It is. It's a plant. How many? We felt it personally. We've dealt with it personally. We have been on every end of adverse marijuana criminal penalties that there are. People shouldn't have to face women, fathers. They shouldn't have to deal with the consequences of being criminalized because of a plant. There's kids that are taken away from their parents. Like there was this girl, Alexandria Hill. Her parents were recreational marijuana smokers, and she was taken away from her parents. Her foster parent was abusing her. The parents were reporting that the foster parent was abusing her. They didn't really do anything about it. When they did change to another foster parent, the day before, after a visit, the father called and said like the girl's stuff was dirty and she was afraid to go back, and he felt like this foster parent was abusing her as well. And they paid him no mind, and that night the foster mother killed her.
Oh, wow.
And this happened, I believe, in Texas. And this is because, why did she have to die? Because her parents smoked weed. Why was it so serious for the government to take her away from a family?
And that's all too common.
It is.
Over the years, I've seen so many children taken away from parents. And not just that, how many
The
families...
hospitals here, St. Peter's Hospital in Albany tests you when you give birth. So if you have THC in your system, then you're charged with neglect.
Wow.
And you catch a case, even though there's the what was the name of that study by Melanie Dreher, marijuana let me look. I have it right here on one of my files. Let me pull it up real quick.
That's incredible.
Okay, while you're doing that, I want to say how many families have been destroyed when a husband gets put in jail and then now the wife and children can't pay the mortgage or can't keep paying the rent, and they wind up moving out or living with parents. And how many families, when a husband goes to jail for 5 years, that when he comes out, is his wife still waiting for him? Or do his kids still know who he is? You know?
Right.
It's got to stop.
This study that I'm about to speak on is something I wrote about before for some of my classes. The case study is called Prenatal Marijuana Exposure and Neonatal Outcomes in Jamaica, an ethnographic study. It evaluates 24 Jamaican neonates rated on the Brazelton Neonatal Assessment Scale. The study has proven that the postnatal developments of the user group at 30 days of age were more autonomically stable than their matched counterparts, as well as having a higher quality of alertness. Their motor systems were more robust and less likely to demonstrate imbalance of tone, having better self-regulation, needing less facilitator examination to become organized, and judged to be more rewarding to the caregivers, as well as being less irritable. The study concluded that the better scores of the exposed babies are traceable to the cultural positioning, social, and economic characteristics of the mothers that were using marijuana that provides neonatal development and permits the cross-cultural examination of the misconceptions and assumptions formulated in Eurocentric cultures.
Yep, and now all our hospitals, under Obamacare, this is a real bad thing. If you take Obamacare, any hospital, if they do a blood test on you and they find any drugs in your system, they are obligated to report it to the police.
No.
Right.
I thought it was that if the police asks, they have to give it up. Otherwise, you have perfect privacy unless the police ask. That's the paper I read that they wanted me to sign.
Yeah, but the police just say to the hospital, we want to know.
Don't let them take a blood test.
Yeah.
Right. We want to know anyone whose blood comes back with drugs in it. There's so many little tricks in this Obamacare. People don't know. It sounds like a good thing. Oh, you're going to get medical health with Obamacare, but it's all been pre-programmed. In other words, if you have cancer, then they already have a formula that you have to follow that formula. If the formula says you have to have a biopsy and then you got to have chemo and radiation along with the operation, you can't walk in there and say, I just want it cut out. I don't want a biopsy. I don't want chemo. I don't want... They have formulas for whatever disease you might have. You don't have a choice under Obamacare.
Right.
You're signing your rights away, right?
Yes.
It's a very tricky position, isn't it?
Right. Well, when it comes to the health laws, they're ridiculous. Look at the Compassionate Care Act in New York. I mean, how much freedom is allowing patients to go to 20 area hospitals to buy cannabis oil and pills? That's it? Wouldn't the true freedom be in allowing patients to grow their own medicine?
Right.
Most of the people that are able to be approved for New York medical marijuana, the way the law reads, it seems like, honestly, they have to be half dead.
Yeah, and they have to have tried other medicines that don't work.
All of them.
They have to have tried all the other medicines that don't work first.
Right, and that means they don't have any money left. So where are they going to get their medical marijuana recommendation from? They can't go to their HMO and have their doctor prescribe it to them because it's illegal under federal law. So now they're going to have to scrape their pennies together to go see an outside doctor in order to get a medical marijuana recommendation. And then when they are lucky enough to get that recommendation and be one of the select few to go to the 20 New York State hospitals,
and pay really high prices to the pharmaceutical companies. and pay really high prices to the pharmaceutical companies for something they could grow in their backyard.
Right. Well, at one point, I'm glad he changed his mind, but at one point, Cuomo wanted to take the weed that was confiscated off the streets and use that for medical marijuana.
Right. Well, that's kind of that is what's going on all over the country. People are so excited. Oh, it's legal, it's legal. But because of the regulations, if you break the regulations, they come in and take it, and what they take then becomes the supply for the dispensaries that goes to their.
We had a
boys.
lady out in Oregon who got in touch with us because we do a lot of law stuff, and we were going to help her with her case.
Lindy Heiss.
She had a medical marijuana license. Her boyfriend was on probation. She was a supplier, a medical marijuana supplier. And she had her 6 plants, which was all they would allow her. And she had one extra, she had been trimming the last plants while she planted her new 6 plants. And she had a couple little buds on one of the plants that she was harvesting, but she had her 6 plants. And when the probation officers came to her house for her boyfriend, right, and they found out that she was growing marijuana, they then brought in Child Protective Services and said, if you don't allow the police to search your house, then we're going to take your children. So she allowed the police to search her house. The police found that she had one scraggly little plant more than she was supposed to have. She got charged with 9 felonies and 3 misdemeanors. And she wound up with an ankle bracelet on for a year.
Now, it wasn't quite as heavy as saying, if you don't let us search, we'll take away your kids. They're just saying, as long as you cooperate
with the police, right?
And so what that is, it's forcing consent, because you don't want to be separated from your children or have Child Protective Services look askance at you. So people think, oh yeah, go ahead, and here you are. You think you're all compliant. You've got the license. And that's why I'm saying, if you don't look at this very carefully, you're not going to understand how this is. It's like, putting ankle bracelets and handcuffs on yourself.
Right.
And that's the way it's
only
going to be in New York.
Because honestly, New York is greedy, so they're going to want to make money.
Yeah.
So they're going to go after people. They're going to be looking for people to violate.
By the way, if anybody wants to call in,
No, we can't call in.
Yes,
no,
they can.
they can. Woodstock 104 is now upgraded. So if you, we have our guest calling in on another number. So call us at 679-9104 if you have any questions for Kim. And what's your group's name again, Kim?
The Capital District Cannabis Consortium and Americans for Cannabis, New York for Cannabis.
How did you come up with the Capital Consortium name?
Well, we're the Capital District, and we took the word capital with an O instead of with an A, because even though Albany is known as the Capital District, because we were kind of making a joke about, capital is where the laws are made from. Albany makes the laws. We want to fight the laws. So we're the Capital District Cannabis Consortium, because there's more than one of us, even though there's a few of us.
That's great.
So it's kind of long, but we try to take care of it. And then I have other affiliates at Americans for Cannabis, which are great. We have chapters in every state, and we're always there looking for people that would love to come and help us voice on repeal.
All the ones in the other states are also on repeal?
Yes, completely on repeal. None of us support legalization.
Wonderful, wonderful.
So you have found people in a lot of other states.
Right, but unfortunately, we don't have, the economics to get together and to put our numbers together. And for the past couple of years in Albany, it's been real difficult trying to get people together. At one point, I tried to get recreational and medical marijuana together to throw a rally at the Capitol and have bands and try to show a joint force to show our representatives that we need to be represented, and it doesn't matter if it's recreational or medical marijuana, the stuff that they're writing needs to be rewritten and repealed.
Yes.
Because the bottom line is, when we look at cannabis, cannabis can be entered into any industry, food, fiber, fuel, or medicine. Henry Ford made a car out of it. The ethanol was created from hemp.
Henry Ford had the largest hemp plantation when his cars originally used to run on ethanol.
Right.
And he had the largest hemp plantation in the United States and was supplying ethanol. And that's when the oil companies came in. You know, there was a big group. It was the oil companies, the pharmaceutical companies, what's the other one? The one that makes clothes, Dow Chemical.
Yep.
DuPont, right. They were
Hearst was a big one because he wanted hemp out of there so he could control the paper.
Yes. And that's who brought about the making marijuana illegal. It was not. It really had nothing to do with health or with people having problems with it. But they used to scare.
Also, Andrew Lloyd Mellon, he put his foot in it because he was the founder of Gulf Oil.
Yeah, and
oil was the replacement for hemp.
And they used the race thing by saying that black people are going to want to have sex with white women, and Mexicans are going to be smoking pot and stealing, and they used all that as a scare campaign to get it illegal. And in fact, if they would have tried to make it illegal and said it was either hemp or cannabis, most of the people in the country knew that there was already hemp medicine. The farmers were growing hemp, and they knew it. So what they did was they used the Mexican word marijuana. And when they were saying, oh, marijuana, this drug from Mexico, even a lot of the farmers that were growing hemp did not realize that they were talking about hemp.
Right. When the Marijuana Tax Act criminalized marijuana in 1937, the press was describing it as killer weed from Mexico.
Right.
And when they introduced the act, it was introduced through the side door of Congress, going through the House Ways and Means Committee. So it didn't have to be sent directly to the floor and introduced as law.
Right.
After the enactment, William G. Woodard, the attorney for the American Medical Association, he said the entire fabric of federal testimony was tabloid sensationalism. No real testimony had been heard, and that the Marijuana Tax Act was passed in ignorance and could possibly deny the world the potential medicine in marijuana. He also continued that the only reason the AMA had not come out sooner was that he had realized 2 days before the hearings that the plant Congress intended to outlaw was cannabis.